Okay, everyone, good morning. I think we'll get started. Um, Hopefully everyone can hear me okay now. Um, uh, and yeah, so thanks for joining us today. A couple housekeeping items up front. We have a lot of people on the call, so we've muted everyone just to help with the quality of the call. If you have any questions as we go, feel free to pop them into the questions box and we'll go through those at the end. I think we'll have time for questions and information sharing. For our clients who have technical questions or need help implementing some of the tools that I refer to later in the presentation, we'll do our best to capture those in the question box, but you can also connect with our support team or your project manager for assistance, and we're all here to help you. The session is being recorded and will be available on our website afterwards, and we're happy to send out the slides as well for the attendees. So my name is Colleen Collins, and before joining eSolutions Group last year, I spent 17 years in progressive communications roles at the City of Kitchener. I participated in emergency management training from Emergency Management Ontario, and I also have incident management training, IMS training, and have been involved in several activations of our Emergency Operations Center at the City of Kitchener. So that sort of is a little bit of the experience that I've had leading into some of the tips and topics that I'll talk about today. So again, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedules. I'm sure you all have a lot on the go right now. Hopefully you'll find today's session provides you with the useful information that you can take back and apply as you manage the challenges before us now. A lot of the messaging and examples I'll use today are related to municipalities, as that's the biggest group of people on the call. However, the ideas and information can certainly be adapted and applied to all organizations. So today we're going to look at why communications in a crisis is key, identifying your stakeholders, strategies and best practices for communicating in a time of crisis, tools for business continuity, and then questions and information sharing at the end. So how your municipality or organization responds to this crisis can help shape the public's opinion of you and have lasting impacts on how the community comes together. Now that might seem like a lot of pressure, however, it's actually an opportunity to not only keep your community safe and healthy during this situation, but also set yourselves up for success by fostering a spirit of community compassion and resilience. You're all likely working long hours alongside public health officials and the provincial and federal governments to manage the impact of the coronavirus on your communities and to help stop the spread of this highly contagious virus. These experts are going to provide you with direction on health impacts, medical advice, financial supports, as well as program and service delivery impacts. So my presentation today will offer insights and advice on the communications aspects of managing a crisis. And although because communications is such a critical component of emergency management, I may occasionally slip in a few notes about emergency management as a whole. I hope that today's webinar will give you some practical actions that you can implement to help you manage both the internal and external communication during this public health crisis. And I'll also touch briefly on some of the tools you can use to continue to deliver services to the community in new ways. You're all experiencing this event, and if it hasn't touched you locally yet, I'm sure you're closely monitoring what's happening across the rest of the country and around the world. There's so much information out there. It's difficult for people, especially when they're under greater stress, dealing with more anxiety and pressures like working from home, having their kids home from school, economic uncertainty, to really know what to believe or to do. As a municipality, you can demonstrate leadership by staying calm, making proactive decisions to help stop this spread, and provide regular and transparent and reliable communication to the various stakeholders in your community. Having clear information and consistent calls to action, which means ensuring you're all on the same page, will help citizens understand what actions you want them to take. They're all also likely watching the news and getting a variety of sources of information. So you want to tell people how you want your community to respond. If you watch some of the key spokespeople out there during this situation, there are those who come across effectively, there are those who effectively come across calmly, who speak with authority and credibility, And as a result, people trust what they are saying. And then there are others who backtrack from previous comments, who go off script and have to be corrected by other members of the team, which leads to a lack of trust and credibility and spreads confusion and misinformation. Again, going back to the leadership point, this is a scary, difficult thing for many people to cope with. They need calm, responsible leadership to reassure them, keep them informed, and look out not only for their physical health, but their mental and financial well-being as well. When we think about who we need to communicate with, we all probably jump right to the residents and the general public. But there are a few other stakeholders that you need to identify early on and set up processes or channels to connect with them to help manage your response to COVID-19 and communicate accurate, reliable information to the public. You want to build your response team early. Identify who the decision makers are internally that need to be involved in all activities related to your response. What information will be shared with them? How and when? What decisions do they want or need to make? What authority will be delegated to staff? What community partners need to be involved? Is it public health, the school boards, transit, other levels of government, other public spaces? And how will they be communicated with? Develop a contact list of key contacts. Certainly the middle of the night during a windstorm is not when you want to find out that no one knows how to get in touch with anyone after hours at the hydro company. And this can be a tiered approach as well. Some people on the list will have more involvement in the day-to-day emergency operations, for example, in this case, public health, and others may be secondary that you loop in as necessary. As always, when identifying target audiences, it's important to have a clear picture of who your audience is. You don't want to just say the public, because the decisions you make, the channels you use, and the information they need will be different depending on their circumstances. So the better understanding you have of who you're speaking to, the more effectively you can respond to their needs. Consider the impacts and actions on businesses. Are you asking or telling them to close, or are there provincial orders requiring them to do so? Do they need to stay open? How can you support both small and larger businesses in addition to any federal or provincial supports that are being offered? Are there businesses in your community that can shift their business to assist in the response? I'm sure you've seen stories of distilleries shifting production to hand sanitizers and companies that do 3D printing getting approval to produce important personal protective equipment for frontline medical staff. The media is key to help disseminate information and will likely be reaching out to get information and interviews throughout the pandemic. Hopefully you have a good relationship with the media, and if not, this could be the start of one. Like you, they have a job to do and a role to play in keeping people informed. Ask yourself and them how you can establish a process that will help both of you do your jobs during these challenging times. One of the key things you should do at the start of an incident is to define people's roles. They may be tasked with doing something that is not part of their regular job description, so people need to know who is responsible for what, including what they are responsible for. Identify your spokespeople. You'll need to have several trusted sources of information and make sure people who know who those spokespeople are. I've seen instances where members of council or staff unofficially appoint themselves as spokespeople, either by reaching out to the media independently or by being active on social media, which can attract their attention and encourage media to connect directly with them. You want to designate key point people who are the experts on various topics that the media is interested in. In this case, obviously, you've got the medical officers of health, politicians, whether they be mayors or provincial ministers, and key staff people, maybe that's the head of transit or the school boards. Have a list so everyone knows who the spokespeople are and what they're able to comment on. This doesn't have to be publicized, it's just for internal staff and those involved in the response. Keep the topics specific to their level of expertise. I'm sure you've all seen examples of political figures making commentary on medical recommendations, which really should be left to the doctors and the medical experts. Another important thing to do is to designate internal point people to manage workflow and communications to ensure nothing falls through the cracks. Staff will have lots of things to manage in addition to some regular work that may be continuing, so it's good to divide and conquer. Ensuring there is clarity around who is responsible for doing what also helps you manage the helpers. People have lots of great ideas, and in times like these, they usually step up to pitch in. The challenge comes when you have staff spending time on a task only to find out that someone else has also been working on the same thing. Or people taking initiative to launch new processes or share information that the emergency response team only hears from outside sources. During a crisis, things are happening fast, circumstances continue to evolve, and information is circulating from a variety of sources. So you want to approach your response in a coordinated and planned fashion. You should be responding and not reacting to the event. This is why many organizations use an incident management system approach to emergency management, because it provides structure and clarity that allows you to consistently gather information, plan, and manage your response to the incident. And now, it's not something you want to do or try to implement for the first time in the middle of an emergency, but it's definitely something worth looking into. Some of the key communications tasks that you should assign to staff are a media liaison. You want to try to flow all media inquiries and outreach through that person, and it could be multiple people if it's over the course of a longer event. They should reach out to the media early in the process to let them know that they are there to assist them in getting the information that they need. This needs to be someone who will be responsive and be able to deliver on their requests so that the media will continue to flow their questions to them. I'll note that delivering on their request does not mean that they always have to deliver. Sometimes the answer is no, and that's okay. But if the answer is always no, the media is going to look to try to find someone else to talk to who can get them what they need. Outbound messaging to the media should also go through this person, because the media will also be getting information from a lot of different sources, and they'll often just look for the first contact in their inbox and reply to that. So by limiting the number of contacts from your organization in their inbox, it'll help flow the information. You should also assign someone to monitor news sources and social media to ensure that they are aware of new information being circulated, and maybe more importantly, the misinformation that's out there. This information should be relayed to your emergency management committee to decide if action is needed to address emerging concerns or correct inaccurate information. You also want to appoint a person per tool or channel, and again, this depends on the number of accounts, the size of your communities or your organization, to push information out. This will help ensure that the messaging is aligned, that the language is consistent, and that the timing isn't overlapping. This person is the gatekeeper and can flag anything that doesn't jive back to the emergency response team. The absence of information is what makes people anxious. If you think about a time you may have been isolated or disconnected from a situation or people, you probably found your mind started making up stories or blowing things out of proportion. Now is not the time you want to let people think alone. Get ahead of the situation by letting residents know you have a plan and are taking action. Often at the start of the crisis, like this pandemic, or an event like a weather or environmental spill, you may not have a lot to say, but by acknowledging that you're aware of the situation and are actively either monitoring it or taking action, gives the public confidence that their local government is working to keep them safe. While most of our thoughts are consumed with the pandemic, this applies to all emergency or crisis situations. If severe weather is forecasted for your area, get out ahead of that. Tell people the key information they need to prepare, and let them know where to go for information during the event, whether it's a web page or hashtags to search. The more you can provide clear, concise information throughout the situation, the more trust you'll build with your audience. You should also establish expectations at the start about how you plan to provide regular, transparent communication with your various stakeholders. Connect with the stakeholders impacted or participating in your community response to clarify who the primary contact person is and the best way to engage them to ensure that important updates aren't missed and you're not wasting resources or duplicating efforts trying to track down people or information. Circumstances are changing rapidly, so it's hard to keep up. Your response needs to be iterative as well. Keep that in mind when you're providing updates. Limit definitive statements like absolute timeframes or next steps. We've seen this throughout the coronavirus situation where governments will take action and then need to escalate their response as circumstances have changed. and then they're challenged by the media about what they said in the past. Set a time frame for how often you'll provide updates, and those updates can be brief and could be as simple as no changes from the last update, but we'll report back at whatever time. For example, the Government of Ontario's website states that information is updated daily at 10:30 and 5:30, 7 days a week. And it's unlikely that you'll need to provide twice daily updates. The frequency will ultimately depend on where you are in the cycle of impact to your community. You want to set expectations and then follow through with them so the public and the media know and trust that you're committed to regular and transparent updates, and that helps to manage the incoming inquiries between times, which helps free up staff to work on the many activities they need to focus on instead of responding to basic inquiries in between updates. Now, I've had success with this in the past on projects that have lasted over a period of time, and definitely as the days have passed, it's reduced or at least helped manage the requests for information. Because all you see on TVs or social media in the papers is COVID related from sources around the world, providing regular updates about your response, circumstances, and actions, you'll provide clarity and reduce confusion by tailoring your calls to action. Use language specific to your community and audience. I live in Cambridge, so I'll use that as an example. What we're asking Cambridge residents to do is, using this type of language can also be a great unifier, as people can take a sense of ownership about their community. You know, we value the people, the businesses, and the parks here, and so that we're doing this for them. Don't forget to keep your own staff up to date so they remain informed of the latest changes and actions and can help spread the word. And while most people will forgive the occasional slip, regularly reading about your organization's response online or in the media rather than being informed directly from your leaders can have a detrimental effect on staff engagement. The impact of this type of crisis affects many public and private sector services. You want to connect with those other service providers in the community, such as hospitals, healthcare providers, educational institutions, transportation services, just to keep the lines of communication open and share information. Having a coordinated approach to your community response will help reduce confusion among the public as a result of conflicting information and build confidence in your leadership. And building off the last point of taking a coordinated approach, having a central location that people can go to find information makes it easier for people to get reliable information. And that's not to say that all the content has to live on your website. However, providing links to key, reputable sources of information like your emergency response partners and other levels of government reduces the number of places people have to go for information. Consider what resources people need: public health updates, government relief and financial assistance, local utility COVID pages, FAQs, cancellation service updates. Just brainstorm a list of things that people will be looking for information on and make that available online. For those of you who have an iCreate website, and I'm sure other content management systems have similar functionality, you can create a friendly URL and encourage people to subscribe to the pages so they can easily find information and get automatically updated as new information becomes available. With the amount of information circulating and the rate at which things are changing, one of the biggest challenges is knowing what information is accurate and what is out of date. So don't forget to include a last updated time to the page so people know that the information is current. You should also take a look at your regular communications channels to evaluate which messages remain relevant and which ones should be momentarily paused. Are there event pages on Facebook or advertising campaigns that may be impacted? What about your website's event calendar? Consider pulling or pausing your events and advertising until circumstances stabilize. Consider how else people can access information. While more and more people are online, how can you reduce barriers to information in your community? This is particularly why good communication with the media is important, because it can help disseminate that critical information through print and broadcast media. But are there language barriers in your community? Aging populations? Are there community partners who support these populations that you can bring into the discussion to help ensure that everyone in the community is informed? Some communities have been using telephone town halls throughout this health emergency, and many mayors are using video updates to help them connect with their constituents. If you're interested in going that route, there are a number of good teleprompter apps that you can load in a script on your iPad and record a video at the same time. Now, while pushing information out using a variety of channels is good from a customer experience standpoint, keep in mind, especially those working in smaller organizations with limited resources, how much effort it is going to be to push out and monitor all those channels. So you may want to limit and advise people up front of the tools that you're going to use to communicate updates, or look for aggregators that can push information out through various channels at the same time, which is something our newsfeed and iCreate can do by integrating with your social media accounts. Even at the height of a crisis, municipalities can help keep residents calm by becoming a trusted source of reliable, regular, and accurate information. I've started to see good infographics clarifying what are and aren't acceptable examples of social distancing. You want to make sure the messages you're putting out there are clear, use simple language, convey a sense of authority, and don't use words that cause alarm, even if you're sharing important or urgent information. I can recall a situation in the past where a bridge, which was a key connection between neighborhoods for a lot of people, had to be closed following an inspection. And one of the people involved kept repeating that the bridge was at or at the risk of a catastrophic failure, which might be accurate from an engineering standpoint, but it's probably not the least anxiety causing way to position it to the public. You'll want to consider the impact of your words and your actions. I've also seen examples of politicians driving around a city during a severe weather incident, commenting on the amount of damage and destruction the storm was causing. Given most people were hunkered down in their homes riding out the storm, seeing that type of information on social media isn't very reassuring. You also don't want to just focus on the negative. You want to create opportunities for hope and inspiration. Even during the most difficult times, people have a remarkable capacity to connect, even while maintaining appropriate physical distancing. Encourage and look for ways to share the positive stories. Give people some ideas and watch the community come up with solutions on supporting each other. It's little things like the teddy bear hunt or chalk the walk, and even my kids are participating in the Lego challenge every day to stay connected with friends. Now let's look at some of the tools that can help you maintain business continuity. This pandemic has thrust all of us into this challenge of looking at how we can do business and how we can do business differently under the current and ever-changing circumstances. Now is when you want to think differently and creatively about how we can meet our community's needs under these restrictions that we're all facing. It's also important to look to the future. The people on this call are likely at many different stages of how this is currently impacting the communities we serve. If you haven't had any or only have a few positive cases in your area, don't wait. Look to others who may be further along the cycle to plan how you will respond and how you can act early. The bulk of this presentation obviously focused on communicating with internal and external stakeholders, but as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, there's a number of features and tools in our iCreate websites that can help you share information with the public. Specifically, you should be using your emergency banner to put information out front and center on your website during a crisis. People can subscribe to receive notices or updates when new information is posted, and people can also subscribe to individual pages within your website to stay informed about the content they want to hear. I also want to highlight a few other resources that can help you maintain business continuity now and into the future when the unexpected arises. Many of our clients already have Form Builder, which allows you to easily create accessible online forms. This tool can help you continue to deliver services to the community during this time of social distancing or office closures by bringing online many of the services people typically access in person. You can use it to gather general inquiries or specific service requests, or let people report issues like potholes or other maintenance requests. If you have the e-commerce function already activated, you can continue to accept payments for permits, garbage tags, and other municipal services. And if you don't have the e-commerce feature, that's an easy upgrade that can be completed within a few days so that you can reduce disruptions to your business and the community. Now, if you don't have an iCreate website, Form Builder is available as a standalone product that can be integrated into your existing website platform. Many organizations are dealing with a remote workforce for the first time and may not have the technical infrastructure to support information sharing and business operations. For iCreate clients who would like support in this area, we can set you up with a secure section on your website that can be accessed only through a secure login. You can create pages, post updates and information, and share resources with staff to support them working remotely or with limited access to network drives. Posting information on a page they have subscribed to on a secured section of the website allows you to push important communications to your staff. I actually came across a stat the other day that showed that push notifications to someone's mobile device are typically read within 1 hour. We also have an online procurement software that can help you continue your procurement processes while avoiding the need for paper submissions and in-person processes. Our bids and tender platform provides bid posting, electronic submissions, online evaluations, e-contract management, as well as the ability to set up emergency vendor lists. So that wraps up the bulk of the information that I wanted to share with you, and I think we'll look at maybe some of the questions that we might have received first, and then if there's time, we can open up the floor to have others share tips about things that they're doing in their communities. Having participated in training sessions before, I can definitely, as well as some actual events, I can say that experience truly is the best way to learn. So hearing from others about their experience and best practices can certainly be helpful. So I'll maybe ask some of my colleagues on the call here who are helping with the organization if there's any questions that have come in that people want addressed.
Hey, Colleen, I just see one asking if we can share the slide deck after the call. And we certainly can do that. And the presentation is being recorded, so that will also be available on our site, free and open as well, of course. So again, if anybody has any questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the questions box or in the chat, and we can certainly answer those for you. It's a nice, valuable time to get maybe your specific organization's needs questions answered while we have Colleen with us. So Colleen, we just have a question asking, what are your best practices to communicate information to people with disabilities?
Thanks for that question. That's certainly a challenge because people living with disabilities certainly each need is different. So broadly speaking, I think you want to use a variety of tools because they will typically have a series of solutions that meet their needs. Obviously, under the provincial legislation, the websites need to be accessible, and our websites certainly are and can allow people to do that so they can get information. But also working with organizations within your community who can help support specific channels if there's, because it's not just information challenges, but for those who might not have access to computer, if they have a network of people who support them, and getting some practical advice from people in that field would be good as well. But again, generally speaking, making sure that your website is accessible, that you use a variety of tools to make sure that you're not limiting information sharing to one channel, and then reaching out to folks in your community that might be able to provide more specific advice based on their interactions serving those populations.
Great, thanks, Colleen. There's a next question here. In your experience, what has been the best way to determine the best platforms to reach various audiences in? For example, in an area with rural and urban areas, how do you determine the effectiveness of reaching people via various platforms and methods?
So again, you want to use a variety of tools that specifically meet your community's needs. The website obviously is a practical tool that people can access. Um, it allows them, even if they're isolated in their homes in rural areas, to be able to access, recognizing also that there's sometimes technical in terms of high-speed internet and that kind of stuff, challenges that way, which is why you want to make sure that your media outlets are supporting you as well and you're sharing information. Again, some of the more rural areas don't necessarily have huge or many options for media. So use those channels. I mean, typically there's radio would be a bare minimum. Um, in terms of reach, and then again, your own platforms that you would normally use. You can go super lo-fi as well, depending on the nature of your community, by posting posters or signs in windows. And if you identify what some of the channels are that people need or have access to. I mean, for example, if you're at a really remote community and everyone still needs to go get groceries, maybe work with your grocery store to see if there's you can put up a poster, or if they can print off updates and share information on the doors or windows of their facility.
Great, thanks. So our next question here is, how do you suggest organizations communicate online when there are broadband access issues, or if the increased demand lowers quality of connectivity? What are the alternatives for these people so they don't feel cut off?
So similarly, I would say just try to think creatively about how you can get information. Certainly recognizing that, you've seen that even just with, I think governments have asked Netflix even to lower the quality of their streaming service because of the increased demand of people working from home and accessing, more content online. So again, going back to that mix of tools that you're going to use, if you've got access to media outlets who can disseminate that information, or look for those locations that people are going and try to work with those partners in your community.
Thanks. We just got another one asking, what are the best strategies to communicate to the Amish or Mennonite communities that may not use as much technology?
Certainly, there's groups of population that are less connected, and that's certainly a factor. Typically, they would, have some regular mechanisms for having information pass through the communities. So again, a good understanding of what those are, chances are you are working with those populations on a regular basis anyways to share information. So look to those tools. And again, lo-fi works too, when some of the contingency planning that we've done for emergency preparedness stuff, you look at, your ham radios and stuff like that, and handwritten, making sure that you've got, you've got access to your printers and your computers so you can disseminate all this information in your cell phones. But depending on the nature of the emergency, you may not have access to any of those things, or eventually your battery is going to wear out on your laptop, or if there's a major power failure like we saw back in early 2000s. So you want to get creative at that point, and again, lo-fi and posters and helping people understand where you're going to be posting those updates. Where would they congregate regularly would maybe be something that you have to resort to. It certainly adds another level of challenge, though.
Thanks. Just another question asking, any recommendations for teams that are really small and resource strapped? And then just another comment, like one person small.
Yeah, and so that's where I think you want to look to assigning those roles and defining those roles. You certainly you can't go with what your job description says at this in a time of crisis. So loop in other people who might have complementary skill sets, and then look for outside resources as well. Certainly, and again, not to, to try to come across too much of a hard sell, but we're here to help. We offer communication services, and we're happy to help support our clients if they need additional resources. but even within the community and your regular network, look to pool those resources if necessary, or the social listening and the media monitoring and things like that you can assign to people who don't necessarily have a communications function. Look in what are the skill sets that you need for updating websites and disseminating information, and maybe you can kind of share the load that way, or again bring in partners that are involved in the response as well.
Perfect, thank you. Just another question asking, how do you find a balance between providing value to the public and not over communicating, especially in situations where you're not the main authority? For example, during COVID-19, does it make sense to repeat all the messages coming from public health and the federal and provincial governments? When does it become information overload for people?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you need to look at where people are getting information, and certainly that's why you see a lot of joint media conferences where there's the different parties that are all together. So certainly you don't want to be commenting extensively on information that you are not necessarily the source of or qualified to provide. Again, looking back at the medical expertise. Other than the basics, hand washing and social distancing components that are a little bit more broadly understood. So what is the direct impact on, in terms of what do you want people to do? So outline, sort of what your goals are, why you're communicating with people. You want them to feel like you're there, you're taking action, you're on top of the situation, managing it as to the best of your abilities. And so that's where it comes back to, provide those links to where those information sources are, and then identify what are the things that you are responsible for and what can you share about that. So if it's about closures or deferred payments or where they can access additional information. I know we have some school boards and some library organizations on the call as well. So if you're a library, who's closed for the duration at this point, you may not have a lot of information that you can share about the crisis itself, but you've got an awful lot of people who are sitting at home with their kids looking for stuff to do. We've seen this with a lot of, my kids are participating in, daily zoo information sharing and daily doodling activities and things like that are online and being shared through Facebook. And I'm sure you guys have all seen examples as well. So concentrate on your area of expertise when you look to sort of making sure that you're adding value and not just adding noise.
Perfect, thanks. And it looks like it's the end for now for the questions. I just want to remind everybody, if you have any stories or any information or knowledge that you want to share during your experiences through COVID-19, please, by all means, enter them in the chat, or if you want to flag to unmute your mic, we can do that as well. So just, yeah, now's an opportunity to kind of, if anybody's experienced anything they've tried and have been really successful at, or anything they've tried and maybe not been, just any general experience really, we can discuss those as well. So just let us know.
I think there's a lot of information, and just give people another moment to give some thoughts to this and see if they want to chime in. There's a lot of stuff going on, and if you just kind of stop and think and put your mind in your audience's shoes, give consideration to, what are your goals and what do you want, what do they need from you at this time? You don't want to just be contributing to the noise. You want to add value, and you want to come up with solutions that make sense for your community. So yeah, I think I also went online this morning and looked at some of what our people on the call have been doing themselves already with their websites, and a lot of them seem to be doing a great job about keeping people informed and having information top and center, front and center on their websites already. So I think that's good to just keep up and look to others to learn from their expertise. And and the other thing I would say is, absolutely, once we get through this, and we will, take notes, and take notes as you go, because you're gonna, who knows how long this is gonna last, and you're gonna maybe forget. I know I found myself, as I was developing the presentation, where do I stop, and new information and new tips and additional things that came to mind as I was developing the presentation, kept popping up, and at some point you've just got to cut that off. So just keep those notes, and reflect on them afterwards, so you can kind of go back and reevaluate your processes and identify what worked and what didn't work, or what you would do differently the next time, because that's really going to set you up for success. And again, this can be applied not only to to municipalities, but to other organizations. The foundations are the same, right? Figure out who needs to be involved, understand what your audience's needs are, and then come out strong with leadership to sort of be that voice of calm, and to help create connections where people aren't connected.
Awesome. We just had one more question come in. Just asking, our municipality also has a strong tourism industry. Do you suggest that we just go dark on these channels, or should we continue sharing business stories?
Yeah, that's a challenging one for a lot of communities. I know I've seen some municipalities who are actually saying, like, don't come and visit us. We're a small area, and we don't have the medical supports to be able to take care of you right now, cottage areas and things like that. I think you obviously don't want to be putting out messaging saying, come visit us now, but maybe start repositioning, or think about how you can reposition that content to, maybe it's dreaming about getting away, or, now's the time to plan your next vacation, or things like that. I mean, you need to be sensitive with your language, but also, don't say, make it a little bit forward facing.
All right, great. That seems to be it for now. If anybody wants to, again, if you want to flag that they want to chat through voice, just let us know. We can unmute. Or otherwise, you can put your questions in the questions box. So we can leave that open for a couple more minutes.
So I'll just jump in again here, and thank everyone for participating in the call. The situation continues to evolve and change rapidly. So as a final tip, I would suggest that you be prepared to adapt and adjust on the fly, and make notes as you go, as I mentioned, so that you can perform a comprehensive debrief once this is over. And then that way, that'll help you be better prepared to face the next crisis. I can't stress enough how important internal communication is to come up with a coordinated approach. Things are changing so fast, and information constantly changes. So have a centralized system or manner of communicating, just so that people aren't inundated with information from all sources, and all scrambling to do the same work.
Thanks. We just had one more come in. It has to do with our iCreate CMS. It's just asking, our COVID-19 information webpage is starting to get full and lengthy. Is the best solution for iCreate users to use accordion foldouts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's certainly a tool. I think it depends. I've seen some municipalities who, depending on the nature of the content and how hard their communities hit, and what services and information they have split it out to multiple pages. I would say that you probably want to keep it, whether it's a separate section, whether you've got landing page features on your site, that you can create like a whole section with some content. But if it's just regular updates, the accordions might be, and you can put accordions within accordions too. And I would sort of maybe want to connect you with our content experts to provide some more concrete specifics about that. But I know that that's something that we've used in the past. So if it's maybe regular updates or daily updates, and then within that you can have your daily updates in accordions there, links to resources, and then you can have that as a separate section with different accordions as well that might help clean up the page a little bit too. But again, I'd be happy to connect you with our content experts for some more specific technical advice. All right, so we'll send out those slides afterwards, and I appreciate all your time today. Please feel free to reach out, and there's some links to the solutions, but I can certainly connect you myself as well. And I hope that you found this helpful today.